Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Stephen Rav Shmuel with you this week for this week's 10-minute Torah and Shabbat Shalom a little early for everybody. So, I kind of like the name Shmuel a lot better, my Hebrew name. Not too keen on Samuel, which is the English equivalent, but I kind of like using my Hebrew name, and I've been using it more and more, Rabbi Shmuel. I just kind of like it. I like the way it sounds, and I like the fact that I'm identifying with my Hebrew background, my Hebrew culture, my Jewish roots, et cetera, et cetera. So first of all, Happy New Year to everybody. Hope you had a good New Year's. And I know it's a secular New Year. I had read an article, maybe last year, the year before, that in Israel, it's basically just another day. I don't know that they even observe it or celebrate it or do whatever. They just acknowledge it. Yes, it's January 1st. It's 2023. Wonderful. Great. So here we are, right? So, we Jews, of course, have the 4 New Years. Of course, there's in Tishrei, there's Rosh Hashanah, which is really the 7th month, but it's the spiritual New Year, the month of Nisan, the month of Aviv, as it's referred to in the Torah, which is the month of spring, which is typically about April, end of March, April, when Moses led our people out to freedom. And then we've got the New Year for trees, which is actually coming up pretty soon, too, Shvat. And then we got the beginning of Elul, which is actually the New Year for animals. So anyway, just a little bit of trivia. So let's talk, and Happy New Year, of course. Let's talk a little bit about this week's Torah portion, Vayechi, and he lived. And of course, they're referring to Jacob, who is about to see his last days. Interestingly enough, there's 2 pieces of very interesting information in this particular portion. 3 if you include the fact that it basically closes out the book of Genesis, and then the following week, next week, we're going to be looking at Shemot, Exodus, and we're going to be hearing how 70 souls went down to Egypt, and down is not just because it's lower altitude, but also because it's spiritually on a lower level than the Promised Land. But also, it does close the book of Genesis, and it starts out with Jacob blessing his sons, adopting Ephraim and Manasseh, first of all, as his heirs, equivalent to the other sons, and it also closes with the death of Joseph. I have kind of always had an issue with this particular portion. And I've kind of struggled in a way to understand the meaning of it. And I'll tell you why. First of all, the Torah portion opens up as what's known as a closed portion. And it is the only portion in the entire Torah that does that. So the closed part means that most parshas either start with a new paragraph, and in the Sansino you'll see a pei, meaning ptuach, which means open, or you'll see it'll start maybe after a space of about 8-9 letters, give or take. And that's called the Samuach, which means that it's closed. So you either see a new paragraph with a new parsha, or you'll see it'll start at the end of that space. And if you see at the end of the space Samuach, you'll see a Samach. That's why in the Sansino Chumash they put the peis and the Samachs in the art scroll, the Eitzayim. They don't really do that. But my concern, my issue, is that Jacob goes ahead and blesses all of his sons. He first of all, of course, adopts Ephraim and Manasseh, and he adopts them because of the devotion that they've shown to this new ethical monotheism, the ancestor, if you will, of our Judaism, of our religion. And they've stayed true to this religion, this idea, this new ideology, this philosophy, in the midst of Egypt, which is very, very pagan. Everything was a god. Everything that seemed to have power over people, and this is what paganism really is deified. It's revered as a god. Like the wind, like the sun, different animals, the Nile, big god, right? So, and Ephraim and Manasseh basically followed in their father's footsteps. even though their mother, Asenath, who was the daughter of an Egyptian priest, Potiphar, was Egyptian. And that's why they're called the sons of Joseph and not necessarily the sons of Joseph and Asenath, even though ostensibly Asenath kind of saw the value of this thing that we now call Judaism. But then Jacob goes on to bless the other sons, saying, for example, that Reuben was impetuous, and this is why he lost out on being the firstborn, being the priest, having the line of the kingship from him. Levi and Simeon are, cursed be their anger, partners in violence, whatever. Judah was the lions. Well, talks about Zebulun and Issachar, how they were seafaring. Talks about, Asher, who was good luck, et cetera, et cetera. Dan is like a snake that hangs out on the path and bites his foes. Then he goes on about Joseph too, singing the praises of Joseph. Now, here's where I have kind of a challenge in really understanding this portion. Why? Why is this given to us when there are pretty much only 3, possibly 4 tribes left? What are those tribes? Well, Levi, the Levites and the Kohanes, right? Judah, this is why we'll call Jews, because most of us are Judeans. Also, the tribe of Benjamin, the story of Purim. Mordecai and Esther were from the tribe of Benjamin, and the Purim, the origins of Purim took place between the first and the second temple. After that, Cyrus, I guess, got real sympathetic toward the Jews and said, why don't you guys go back to Canaan, back to Judea, and rebuild your temple, build the second temple. And there were Benjamites there. Some people say that the tribe of Manasseh has come back. Some people say that they've identified the tribe of Dan as an African tribe now, and they've kind of got this weird religion. It's kind of a mix, kind of a hybrid of Judaism. They observe Shabbat, but they do run around revering pagan gods as well. So what is the point of looking at what these other tribes were blessed for and what their characteristics were? Well, some of the commentary talks about Jacob wanted them to fulfill their purpose. And that's why he identified the characteristics and basically, gave them kind of a send-off. Of course, Levi and Simeon, cursed be your anger. He's not chastising them. He's chastising their anger. And basically it's a warning, like, don't get angry. If you do, take a couple of breaths, count to 3, whatever you have to do. That's kind of the moral. The other thing is that Judah, of course, was a lion's whelp. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. And here we all are, thousands of years, millennia later. What happened to the tribe of Joseph? People descended from Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraimites were incredible warriors. There was a situation where one of the judges, I think it was Gideon, took a squad of people out to do battle, and he came back victorious, and the Ephraimites were waiting for him, going, how come we didn't get invited to the party? We would have fought. Why did you come to us? So the other part of it is that even with Joseph's prophecy, even with his characteristics, what happened to those tribes? What happened to the tribe of Joseph or the half tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim? Manasseh, maybe they've come back. There was some talk that these Jews from, I guess it was Malaysia, felt that they were descended from the tribe of Manasseh. So maybe that's part of the prophecy. But what happened was when the kingdom of Israel, our kingdom divided in two, you had Judea to the south, Israel to the north. And I've seen in a few places, and maybe this is an obscure reference, that the northern tribe was also the northern kingdom was also referred to the kingdom of Joseph. So what's the lesson of this? Now, some people might say, well, yeah, Rabbi, but what about the offerings? We spend practically 2.5 books talking about the offerings, the sin offering, the peace offering, the Thanksgiving offering, and all the offerings. What are they? They're just cutting up animals and serving them on this barbecue, basically, for Hashem and for some of the priests and the Levites, depending on what the venue is. Why are we still reading about that? Hasn't been going on in over 2,000 years. And some people think that the third temple isn't going to involve animal sacrifice. And the only reason why we had animal sacrifice in the first place was because that was the way at that time that religions observed their religion by sacrificing, by offering. Some of them committed the horrible acts of human sacrifice. So the idea of sacrificing animals was to get us off of the idea that humans are worthless enough that you can just burn them on a fire to a god and appease the god. And this was kind of a step up. So maybe now we've taken a step up. Religions today, we all pray. So I think that the third temple is really going to be nothing more than, well, not nothing more, but you know what I mean. It's going to be a big synagogue. Now, there are some people in Israel that are going to vehemently disagree with me and say, oh, no, no, no. Third temple's rebuilt, needs to be just as it says in the Torah. Who knows? So these are questions that we have. The point is this. We're here, it's today. We study it anyway because we want to learn. We want to learn. Maybe these people made mistakes. Maybe they weren't as embedded in this idea of ethical monotheism as they should have been. The idea of the offerings, and we'll get to that later. We'll talk about it more later. Again, it's offering is offering. Maybe now we just offer our heart. Okay, time's up. Shabbat Shalom. Happy New Year. And we'll see you at temple. See you at synagogue. Thank you.